First Year, Part 7. The Hunt Begins. A.M. Ashwin. All of the students scrambled off in different directions. "Let's go this way," Lily said, pointing at a door to our right labeled music room. When Lily opened the door, a dark figure jumped into view. The figure didn't look human. It wore all black. It looked like an old woman, but she had grayish skin, and her eyes were completely black. She had long, bloody scratches running down her face. It wasn't like the thing that popped out at us when we entered the house. It wasn't fake. Lily jumped back in surprise, looking up at the thing in horror. Alice and I froze with fear. The boy, Jugson, reacted by punching at the thing. The old woman opened her mouth to reveal a billion tiny pointed teeth. The thing had no tongue. Where her tongue should have been, there were only teeth. Her mouth opened so wide that her jaw went down to her chest. Jugson's fist went straight into her mouth. Alice reacted at lightning-fast speed and shoved Jugson out of the way. The woman's sharp teeth just scraped against his skin. "This isn't a joke." Lily's eyes were wide in fear. "This thing will hurt us." The thing let out a loud screech of fury and lunged toward Lily, who screamed in terror. Snapping out of my frozen state, I reached for my wand. In one quick motion, I cast the tripping inks at the girl. It worked, but only for a moment. The girl was back up in a second, and her attention was focused on me now. It lunged toward me, wrapping its long bony fingers around my neck. It squeezed hard, and I felt my vision blur. A moment later it was knocked away. I gasped, choking. "Okay," Alice said in a calm, controlled voice. She had her wand pointed at the women. "One of us have to find the chest while the others distract this thing." The women lunged at me again, but Lily sent a quick leg-locking curse its way. All of the spells we used only seemed to work for a few seconds on this thing. This time when the women recovered, instead of lunging at us, she jumped up. It clung to the ceiling like a spider, its head twisted at an odd angle, watching us with black eyes. "Jim, you look for the chest," Alice said. It took me a moment to realize she was speaking to me. I felt glad that it wasn't me who had to make the decisions in this situation and was grateful Alice was taking charge. "Okay," I agreed. I glanced around the room, looking for any small chest. It was the first time I was able to take in our surroundings. There were musical instruments everywhere. Hanging on the wall was a large rectangular picture frame. It was the list the twins spoke of. The numbers inside were 25. It changed to 24 as I looked at it. Somewhere in this house, a team had quit. I wondered how many teams there had been in the beginning. There were many spots the chest could be hidden, but I went straight toward the piano. It stood out more than anything else in the room, and it was in the very center. Moonlight from outside shone on the dusty piano, all that had to mean something. The thing on the ceiling hissed at me, and I paused. "Keep going," Lily said reassuringly. Her eyes were fixed on the creature. "We've got your back." "Hurry," Jugson said. I ran towards the piano, trusting that the others would protect me. I heard the thing screech, and my team casting spell after spell on the thing, keeping it away from me. The creature's angry screams were becoming louder and louder. It knocked Jugson across the room with an unnatural amount of force. Jugson fell to the floor, cradling his shoulder that had hit the wall hard. As I was about to reach the piano, I was suddenly yanked down to the floor. I gasped and looked down. 2 hands grasped my ankle. They had come up from the floorboards. It squeezed my ankle with such force I knew I would have a bruise. The hand that squeezed my wooden leg didn't hurt at all. I yanked my legs away, but the hand held tight. It started to pull me down into the floor with it. Grasping for my wand that had fallen out of my pocket, I seized it and pointed it at the hand. I cast a body-binding spell, and the hand stopped pulling me, frozen. I pried its paralyzed fingers off my ankles, which now had fingernail marks on the real leg and was swollen red. I let out a wince of pain as I stood up, and put all my weight on my wooden leg that hadn't been injured. As soon as I had stood up though, I had to duck. The old woman came lunging right at me out of nowhere, and I just missed her outstretched arms. Lily and Alice were struggling to get up from the floor. Alice had a bloody bite mark on her arm but wasn't paying attention to it. She cast another spell at the creature, causing it to go flying across the room, away from me. Remembering my task, I continued to the piano. I pulled open its lid, and a dozen bats flew at my face. I batted them away impatiently and glanced inside the piano. Inside the piano sat a small black chest. It was the size of my fist. Grabbing it, I slammed the piano shut. I whirled around and ran over to Jugson, who was trying to stand back up. I wrapped my arm around his waist to help him stand, and we both made our way to the door. "Come on," I yelled to Lily and Alice, who were both facing the creature. "I've got it. Let's go." Casting a few spells behind them at the creature, the two girls ran over to us. Before slamming the door closed, I looked at the wall that had the rectangular picture frame hanging from it. It now had the numbers 16 on it. 9 teams had quit since we had been in this one room. I didn't blame them one bit if all the rooms were anything like this one. Alice had a bite mark that was oozing blood on her arm, Lily had a small bump on her forehead, Jugson had a scrap on his knuckles where the thing had tried to bite him and a gash on the back of his head. My ankle was swollen and bruised, with bloody little fingernail marks etched into the skin. I made a quick process of healing all the minor wounds that I could. Besides a scab or two, we were almost as good as new. I showed them the little box I had been clutching tightly. "Open it," Lily said excitedly. Inside the chest was a little piece of metal, shaped like a puzzle piece. There was a small folded-up piece of paper as well. Alice took the paper out and read it aloud. "It says," Alice started, "you've found a black chest, but you still need 5 more. You need the color red next. You'll find it on the 3rd floor." "Right," Lily said. She eyed the long marble staircase wearily. "Just be careful going up there." I saw a few people fall straight through. We climbed the steps carefully, making sure to test each step first. As we reached the 2nd floor, I could hear screaming coming from a few of the rooms. Down the dark hallway, I could see a small girl standing under a dim light, holding a teddy bear. For a moment, I thought she was one of the students. But when she looked up, I saw I was mistaken. Where her eyeballs should be, worms crawled in their place. Her mouth wasn't a mouth at all. It was a stitched line. Her skin was the color of paper, too pale to be human. I noticed blotches of dark blood on her nightgown. The teddy bear's head rolled to the side, a few strings attaching it to the body. The girl didn't do anything, just stood there. We made our way up the 2nd staircase that led to the next floor. The 3rd floor had a long dark hallway with peeling wallpaper. A single light hung from the ceiling at the end of the hallway. The light bulb was dim and kept flickering. There were 2 doors each on both sides of the hallway, and one door at the very end. One of the doors on the left was boarded up. "There are 5 rooms," said Alice. "Which one has the red chest in it?" "The note just said the chest is on the 3rd floor," I said. "I suppose they all must have a red chest." Just then, the flickering light at the end of the hall went out, making the hallway pitch black. "Okay," I said nervously. "Let's go into the closest room." We began to walk down the hall, feeling along the walls and sticking close together. "This all feels so real," Lily said as we walked. "I am terrified, even though this is supposed to only be a game." "A game maybe," Alice said. "But it's a dangerous game. The things in this house want to harm us." I felt the first door and grasped the handle. Someone grabbed my wrist, pulling my hand away from the door. "What are you doing?" I asked. "What is who doing?" Jugson asked right next to my ear. He was right beside me. "Let go of my hand." I tugged away from whoever had my wrist and they let go. "Chin," Jugson said hesitantly. "I didn't touch you." "Neither did I," Alice's and Lily said simultaneously. I felt a chill go through me. If it wasn't any of my team, who had grabbed my hand. "Let's go to the next door," I said, quickly scrambling to get away from that door. We came to the next door, but this time I didn't try to open it. "I'm going to open the door now," Lily said, "be ready for anything." In the darkness, I could see the door slowly open. There were no lights in the bedroom, but the light from the bright moon that shone through the window cast enough light to see the room. Like the walls in the hallway, the wallpaper in the room was peeling and old. There were 3 windows, all of which were open. Thin, billowing, white curtains reminded me of ghosts. The room had a single bed in it, a bedstand and a small dresser. On the wall beside the bed hung 2 black and white pictures of a boy and girl on either side. The rectangle picture frame hung right above the bed. The number was 13. The room was freezing. Everything was black or white. Everything except one thing, that is. A small red chest sat in the middle of the bed, looking very out of place in this room. I looked around, waiting for something to pop out at us. Nothing happened. I walked to the bed and snatched the red chest. I waited, but nothing happened. It can't be that easy, I heard Jugson say from behind me. Let's get out of here before something bad happens. I walked quickly back to the doorway where the others had remained. We all piled out into the dark hallway, shutting the door behind us. We walked back the staircase that led back to the 2nd floor when the single light at the end of the hall flickered back on. The hallway was once again lit dimly. "Where's Jugson?" Lily said suddenly, looking alarmed. She turned in a circle. I looked around us. Only Lily, Alice and I stood in the hallway. "Jugson?" Alice called. No answer. "Oh no," Lily said. "He must still be in the room." We made our way back to the room and opened it. At least we tried to. The handle wouldn't budge. We pounded on the door, calling out Jugson's name. There wasn't a sound from within the room. After a moment of pounding on the door and trying to open it, I remembered our wands. I pointed my wand at the door and cast the unlocking charm. We tried the door again, but it still wouldn't budge. It must not be locked. Either something on the other side was holding it, or it was stuck somehow. "What do we do?" I asked hopelessly. "Well," Alice said, "we're all still here, so Jugson must not be in so much danger that he would quit." "But he might be unconscious," Lily argued. "Or maybe he can't speak, that's why he won't answer when we call." "I think we should hurry and go find the other chests," Alice said. "There's nothing else we can do. The longer we stand here trying to get in, the longer Jugson has to be in there." "Maybe we should just quit," I suggested. "No," Lily and Alice said together. "I'm sure that nothing bad will happen to Jugson," Alice assured. "The twins wouldn't make it so people physically couldn't speak to say they quit. This is probably all just part of the game. A scare tactic to make us quick. They're testing our strength." "You're probably right," Lily said. "I say we go on. Jugson will be all right." Alice and Lily began to walk away from the door. I had 2 options. I could abandon Jugson, my teammate. Or I could let Alice and Lily down. As much as I hated the thought of making my team lose, I couldn't leave Jugson in the room, alone. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I can't just leave him. He might be truly hurt in there." Lily and Alice looked back at me. "Don't you dare quit," Lily said urgently, seeing the resigned look on my face. "I'm sorry," I said again. I looked at Lily and Alice, who both were looking at me in disappointment. We had come all this way, only to have one of us quit. After a moment of shocked silence, Lily stepped forward. She sighed. "You're right, Jin," Lily said. "We can't leave him. No prize or glory is worth leaving a friend, well, a teammate I suppose. I don't even know him. But a team sticks together." After a long moment of hesitation, Alice stepped back toward the door. "All right," Alice said. "We'll all quit at once. Ready? On 3. All at once." We started to say the words that would transfer all 4 of us back downstairs. I wished to key. Suddenly, the door banged open. We all jumped back in alarm. In the room, Jugson sat on the small bed, jumping up in surprise when the door opened. We all stood, frozen for a moment before Jugson ran over to us. "Why didn't you guys come back?" Jugson asked accusingly. I called and pounded on the door. "We didn't hear you," Lily said, still a little shocked. "We kept calling you. You wouldn't answer. What happened?" "I'm not sure," Jugson said. As we were leaving, I stopped for a moment to look at the pictures on the wall. I could swear one of them moved. When I turned back, you guys were just closing the door. I called for you to wait, but you didn't seem to hear me. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. So I decided to wait for you guys to notice I wasn't there." A frightened expression passed over his face. "Something else was in that room with me." "What? Who did you see?" I asked. "I didn't see anything. I just sensed a dark presence, you know," Jugson said. "Let's get out of here. This hallway is giving me the chills," Alice said. We made our way back to the stairs and sat down. Inside the red chest, there was another small metal puzzle piece. Lily put the two puzzle pieces together. They molded together. Lily placed the puzzle pieces that were beginning to form a key safely into her pocket. There was another note in the box, and Lily read it out loud. "Two treasure chests down, but four are still absent. There's no need to frown, you'll find the next in the basement." Lily let out a heavy sigh after reading this. "I hate basements. Mine has always creeped me out, and mine isn't even haunted." We made our way back down to the main room. People were eating from the long tables, and I could hear laughter and music coming from the game room. I gave the candy and game room a longing look before I followed the others through a door labeled basement. We walked down the long, dark staircase that led down into the basement. As we reached the bottom, I could see the rectangle picture frame hanging on the wall. Its numbers were 9. "This used to be a torture chamber," I said as we began to walk around. "Look at this basement." Lily turned in a full circle. "It's huge. There's no way we're going to be able to find the chest in here. It'll take forever." "We have to split up," Alice said. She didn't sound like she wanted to. "No, absolutely not," Lily said, turning pale at the thought. "You know there's something probably down here." "We need to go in 4 different directions," I said. "It's the only way we're ever going to find it." "I know you're right," Lily said. "But I don't want to." "You need to be brave, Lily," Alice said. "We all need to be. If anything happens, call, and we'll all come running. Besides," I added, "if anything does happen, we can always quit if it gets too bad." Quitting was the last thing any of us wanted to do. Maybe it was the Gryffindor in me, but I didn't want to lose. Deep down, I wanted nothing more than to beat everybody else at this treasure hunt. To show them I could be every bit as Gryffindor as they were. I wanted to be acknowledged as a something other than a freak. I shouldn't care who won. I shouldn't care about proving myself. I should care about being safe for the glory. But the feelings I had at the thought of quitting were undeniably there. We separated and began to search the entire basement. The basement was most certainly haunted. The chains on the walls rattled, things kept moving around in the basement, the lights flickered, and I could hear distant cries. Cries of the long-ago tortured. At one point, I saw what looked like a tall, dark figure duck behind a stretching torture device. I came across a part where there were metal bars on the floor. I looked down and discovered there was a cage-looking thing. As I bent down to look closer, I could see 2 glowing eyes looking up at me. I muttered the Luma's charm and pointed the light down. There was nothing there. Nothing but a rope with a noose at the end hanging from one of the metal bars. I don't know how long we had been searching when I heard Lily call out from close by. It wasn't a cry for help, but a cry of victory. I ran in her direction. When I reached her, I saw that Lily had a small green chest in her hand. Jugson and Alice were already there. Wasting no time, we made our way back up the dark staircase, into the light of the main room. There were more students by the candy now, and a few glanced over at us as we came back up. "That one seemed pretty easy, compared to the others," Alice said, glancing around to make sure we were all there. We sat at the bottom of the stairs and opened the green chest. Lily took the puzzle piece and connected it with the rest of the key. I took out the note and read it. "You passed the test, but you still have to pass 3 more, to find the next chest. Go to the place where you eat dinner." I glanced over to one of the doors that I had seen when we first came in. "It means the dining room," I said, gesturing to the door labeled dining room. "What test is it talking about?" Alice asked. "We didn't pass any test, we just found the box. We didn't even come across anything that tried to attack us." "Let's go," Jugson said, standing and heading towards the dining room. As Jugson pushed open the door to the dining room, he froze. I stepped into the room to see what he was staring at. There were cobwebs everywhere. Seated at the long table were people. The people, I realized after a moment, weren't ordinary people. They were dead. Their skin was a deathly white, and their flesh had been eaten away enough to see the bone in some spots. Maggots crawled all over them. There was a terrible stench in the room, a combination of rotten food and the smell of death. "I really hope they aren't real," Lily said. She looked sick. "Of course they're not," said Alice. "They wouldn't have real dead people in here. Come on, we need to find the chest." We followed Alice as she stepped closer to the table. The table was covered in rotting food, mold growing everywhere. I noticed the rectangle picture frame hung on the table. Its number was 6. There were only 6 teams left. "Where could the chest be?" I asked, looking around the room. "Just a theory," Jugson said, "but I think the chest will be either in the food or on, maybe even in, the dead people." "That's disgusting." Lily looked like she was going to be sick. "How are we supposed to get it?" Taking a deep, resigned breath, Jugson began to pat one of the dead people. He emptied its pockets, only to find a few coins and a flask. Lily looked incredulous. "Come on." Jugson moved on to another person and began to pat it again. "Start looking." Lily lightly touched one of the dead people, and then jumped back, as if she expected the person to punish her for touching it. When it didn't, she imitated Jugson and began patting and feeling the dead person in hopes of feeling a box somewhere on it. Alice and I glanced at each other and then began to search. Lily lasted for about a minute before she threw up from the horrid stench. Jugson dry-retched, but nothing came out. In a matter of minutes, we had searched all the people seated at the table. Nothing. "Well," Jugson said. "I guess that means we have to move on to the food." "What are we supposed to do with it?" Lily asked. She had slowly made her way back to the table after having puked up all the contents she had eaten that day. "We'll have to dig through it," I answered. "What? With our hands?" Lily looked like she was going to throw up again at the thought. I looked at the bowls and dishes filled with rotten food. Some of the food had maggots crawling all over it. "Yes, unless you have a better idea," I said. "I do," Alice volunteered. "We can just dump the food somewhere. We don't need to touch it that way." She stepped forward and picked up a bowl of thick liquid. "Well," she tried to pick it up. It didn't budge. "Looks like it's stuck to the table," Alice said in disappointment. In one quick motion, Alice stuck her hands in the bowl, feeling around. "Nope, not in here." She withdrew her hands, which were now covered in foul-smelling slime and a few crawling maggots. If Lily or anyone else had thought that she had puked up everything in her stomach, they were wrong. Lily began to retch and turned away to puke. I stepped forward and looked at the food before me. I decided to start with the least disgusting thing first. It was an old, dry cake, with furry mold all over it. I reached in and began to break it into chunks. Its odor drifted up into my nose, and I gagged. There was nothing inside the cake. I began to move on to another dish, a dish of what looked to be some sort of pie, when Jugson cried out in delight. I found it. Jugson held a small brown chest in his hand. He stood over a bowl of rotten chunks of meat in it. The chest was covered in bits of meat and maggots, but Jugson was so excited he didn't seem to notice. "Great," Lily said. "Let's go." Now. She staggered to her feet and stumbled out of the room. This time, the door opened easily. As soon as we were out of the dining room, I took a deep breath. I had never appreciated fresh air as much as I did at that moment. Jugson immediately opened the chest. Lily cast a scouring charm on herself, even though she had only touched one of the dead people. Taking out my wand, I cast one on myself as well, and I cast one on Jugson and the chest that was still covered in maggots and meat. Jugson didn't seem even to notice. He was too busy taking out the next part of the key and the folded note that was inside the chest. He handed the puzzle piece of the key to Lily, who connected it to the rest. Jugson unfolded the paper and began to read. "Time is running out. You'll need to be quick. The next chest, no doubt, is in the attic." Jugson read from the note. Author's note. Did you guys like this chapter? I hope so.